The chandeliers sparkled like stars suspended from the heavens, casting golden light over the marble ballroom floor. Ariana Malik stood at the center of it all, radiant in a custom silk gown that hugged her elegant frame, the soft curve of her baby bump adding grace to her already poised silhouette. Cameras flashed. Guests whispered. Her smile was the kind that women in magazines wore, serene, luminous, effortlessly composed. At 29, she was everything they wrote about, the glowing wife of billionaire hotel mogul Daniel Shah, the charitable force behind the Malik Foundation, and the soon-to-be mother of a child the media had already dubbed heir to an empire. From red carpet galas to Vogue spreads, Ariana's life was painted in soft pastels and gold accents. Social media devoured photos of her and Daniel walking hand in hand, her head resting gently on his shoulder, his protective arm around her waist. They were Pakistan's power couple, a love story that began in a courtroom and ended in castles. He was her client once, fighting a lawsuit that could have destroyed his empire. She was the sharp, fearless lawyer who saved his name and stole his heart. Or so the fairy tale went. But fairy tales have shadows, and behind Ariana's graceful poise, there were sleepless nights and unreturned calls. Daniel, always traveling for work, seemed to vanish more frequently as her pregnancy advanced. He missed doctor appointments, skipped nursery planning, and brushed aside her concern with practiced charm. "You know how busy expansion is," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "I'm doing all this for you and our little prince." Ariana would nod, trying to believe it. But doubt had already begun whispering. Her body changed with every week, her ankles swelled, her cravings intensified, her heartbeat echoed with two rhythms now, but she was alone in the quietest moments. Even their grand penthouse, with its private elevator and infinity pool, began to feel more like a showroom than a home. The staff was too polite, the silence too polished. The emptiness grew heavier than the baby inside her. Then, one evening as she lay curled on their Italian suede couch, a text lit up Daniel's second phone, one he kept in his office drawer and never left lying around. It vibrated against the desk's mahogany surface, and Ariana, alone and restless, instinctively reached for it. "Can't wait for Friday. I miss you already. You owe me a surprise like last time kiss mark." The number wasn't saved. No name. But the implication was louder than the heartbeat on her last ultrasound. Her fingers trembled as she put the phone back exactly as it was. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. Not from fear, but recognition. She had seen this play before. Not in her life, but in the lives of women who came to her firm in tears. The ones she once represented with fire in her eyes. Now she was the one with tears she couldn't cry. She placed a hand over her belly, as if to shield her unborn child from the truth inching its way into her carefully curated life. For the first time in months, Ariana didn't feel like a glowing wife. She felt like a woman standing at the edge of something shattering, and she didn't yet know how far the fall would be. The night air was thick with tension as Ariana sat in the back seat of her matte black SUV, parked a good distance from the private airstrip on the outskirts of the city. The driver, a loyal employee of her family's estate, didn't ask questions, only followed her instructions with silent efficiency. Ariana wore a simple black shawl wrapped tightly around her head, her baby bump disguised beneath a loose abaya. The disguise didn't do much to slow her racing pulse. She shouldn't have been there. A 7-month pregnant woman had no business trailing her billionaire husband to a secluded airport after midnight, but she needed the truth. And now she was here, staring it straight in the face. Through a pair of binoculars, she watched the scene unfold under the floodlights. Daniel stood beside a sleek, pearl-white Bombardier jet, the company logo of his hotel chain boldly stamped on the side. He was laughing, carefree, charming, the way he used to be with her. Standing next to him, dressed in designer loungewear that barely covered her legs, was Sanaa Iqbal. Ariana recognized her instantly. A rising social media star with 1 million followers and a talent for vanity, Sanaa had been featured in several hotel campaigns, all sponsored by Daniel's brand. Ariana had once dismissed her as just another influencer looking for relevance. Now she realized she was far more than that. Daniel handed Sanaa a black velvet envelope, and the girl's eyes lit up as she pulled out the title papers. A kiss on the cheek. A too intimate hug. The unmistakable intimacy of a long-cultivated romance. Ariana felt her stomach twist, her body responding to the betrayal with a nausea stronger than any morning sickness. She aimed her phone carefully through the side window, recording every movement, his smile, the documents, the embrace. She zoomed in on the tail number of the jet. She took photos. She time-stamped them all. Her training as a former lawyer kicked in automatically. She was building a case. Even if her heart was in pieces, her mind had work to do. The scene continued. Denial walked Sanaa up the steps into the plane, his hand on the small of her back. The gesture was so familiar, Ariana had to steady herself. She had been on that same jet once, on their honeymoon, on their first anniversary trip. She had made love to him in those leather seats, whispered dreams of their future above the clouds. And now, he was giving it away like a toy to a girl who posted bikini hauls and day in my life reels. A flashback struck her like lightning. She remembered their second anniversary dinner, the one he flew in late for. He'd claimed his meeting with investors had run long. She'd believed him. That night, she sat alone in their penthouse suite, candles burning down to nothing, her gift unopened beside her. Now she realized that meeting had been a lie. It always had been. The memories came in waves. Every moment she doubted herself, every time he made her feel demanding for asking for attention, every whispered promise to be more present once the business stabilized. It had never been about work. It had always been about her. Sanaa. The glass door to the penthouse slid shut behind her with a muted click, sealing Ariana inside a world that suddenly felt unfamiliar. The silence was deafening, cushioned by imported rugs and the hum of hidden air purifiers. Everything looked the same. Her favorite orchid arrangement sat on the marble counter, the crystal water jug beside a bowl of fresh oranges, the gold-trimmed photograph of her and Denial from a Paris gala smiling down from the shelf. But Ariana knew now that none of it was real. The man in that photo had walked another woman onto a jet just hours ago, and kissed her like he didn't have a wife waiting at home, pregnant, hopeful, and blind. She walked straight to the study, locking the door behind her. The storm inside her didn't show on her face, but it guided her hands. She powered on her laptop and inserted the encrypted flash drive she'd kept since her days at the firm, a habit she'd never outgrown. Her fingers flew across the keys, navigating passwords only she knew. In moments, she was inside Denial's private cloud storage. She had always had the passwords. He'd once called her his queen of transparency. That irony wasn't lost on her now. She spent hours sorting through bank records, filtering transactions, tracing where the money went. The jet was just the tip of the iceberg. She found lavish transfers labeled as consulting fees, monthly payments to luxury rental services, and even a Dubai property registered under a holding company. Each discovery landed like a brick in her chest. She documented it all, screenshots, PDF backups, and a digital ledger that listed every asset moved without her knowledge. Her pregnancy wasn't stopping her, it was fueling her. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about protection. For her child. For herself. The next day, she called the one person she trusted more than anyone, Faria Zaman. Faria arrived within the hour, storming into the study in jeans and a loose button-down, her laptop already open before she Saturday. "You okay?" she asked, searching Ariana's face. "I will be," Ariana said simply. Faria didn't ask too many questions. She didn't need to. She had seen this before, dozens of women who smiled in public and shattered in private. But this time, it was her best friend. And Ariana wasn't just another wronged wife, she was brilliant, methodical, and now, utterly focused. 4 hours, they worked side by side. Faria helped her interpret asset trails and identify clauses in the prenup Denial likely assumed she'd never read. "He's been shielding wealth under shell companies," Faria said, highlighting sections. "But we'll nail him. You need to start documenting your contributions too. Every charity event, every business proposal you helped edit, every media appearance. He built this empire with your face beside his." "I already started," Ariana replied, opening a file labeled Silent Storm. By the third day, Denial returned, dressed in tailored travel wear, sunglasses still on, the smell of his cologne entering the penthouse before he did. He walked in casually, dropping his overnight bag by the door. "Missed you," he said, kissing her cheek. She didn't flinch. She smiled, even leaned into him slightly. She had learned long ago how to act. "You look tired," she replied softly. He grinned. "Long meetings. Dubai is exhausting. I'm sure." They had dinner. Talked about nursery themes. He didn't notice that she no longer asked questions about his trip. He didn't notice that her smile didn't reach her eyes. But behind the veil of quiet, Ariana was moving quickly. She had already spoken to a forensic accountant. She had a hidden folder of evidence. She had a lawyer who knew how men like Denial played, and how to end the game. The deadline was set in her mind. The baby was due in 2 months. He wouldn't see it coming, but when she moved, she would do so like the very storm she had become, silent, focused, and devastating. There was a time when just hearing Denial's voice had made Ariana smile without even trying. The memory came to her like a scene out of an old film, faded at the edges but still vivid at the core. She'd been wearing a crisp navy blazer, heels clicking down the marble halls of the courthouse when she first met him. He was standing outside a courtroom, pacing on his phone, frustration etched across his jaw. Their eyes had locked for only a moment, but it was enough. She knew then that she was looking at someone dangerous, someone magnetic. He became her client shortly after. She was assigned his high-profile property fraud case, a PR disaster that could have cost him millions. But Ariana was sharp, relentless, the youngest partner at her firm. She won the case with such precision that Denial called her the real empire builder. He sent roses to her office, invitations to exclusive galas, made her feel like she was the only woman in a world full of noise. Within 6 months, she had fallen in love. Within a year, she had walked down the aisle in a diamond-studded lehenga, with cameras flashing and guests whispering about how lucky she was. Back then, he spoke of her career with pride. He promised she could have everything, her independence, her profession, and their love. But slowly, the promises began to blur. After the wedding, he gently encouraged her to take a break from the firm. "We'll travel. We'll build something bigger. You've worked too hard for too long," he said. And she had believed him. She thought love meant compromise, and she was ready to give her all to their life together. Now, sitting alone in the nursery that smelled faintly of fresh paint and lavender baby powder, she saw the years in reverse. She remembered the subtle red flags that had once flickered in the background, ignored. The way he kept his phone separate, one for business that he never left lying around. The unexplained ATM withdrawals when he claimed to be abroad. The late-night texts he never let her see. At the time, she had chalked it up to stress, to work, to privacy. She had been trained in logic and evidence, but in love, she had operated on hope. How many times had she told herself he loved her too much to cheat? How often had she dismissed the knot in her stomach as just anxiety, hormones, overthinking? Now she knew better. Her love story hadn't been a tragedy, it had been a mirage. And she had been the fool who kept chasing it. But the heartbreak that had once paralyzed her was changing. She didn't cry anymore when she thought of the woman he chose to spoil with jets and kisses. She didn't shake when she scrolled through his lies. The sadness was hardening, shaping itself into something sharper, something stronger. He had betrayed her. But worse, he had underestimated her. And that was his fatal mistake. Because the woman he thought was too soft to fight back was already writing the final chapter of their story. This time, on her terms. It started with a real, slow-motion footage of Sanaa Iqbal descending the steps of a luxury private jet, her hair perfectly styled, her outfit screaming opulence. Surprise gift from someone who knows how to spoil a girl right. She didn't delete the apps. She didn't block the content. She just watched. Not because she enjoyed the pain, but because knowledge was power. And Ariana had learned to treat pain like evidence. Meanwhile, Denial sprang into action, not to stop the scandal, but to spin it. He organized a photo shoot with Ariana, suggesting they shut down the noise with a united front. She agreed, playing her part like a seasoned actress. Dressed in coordinated pastels, they strolled through a manicured garden, his hand protectively placed on her belly. The photos were posted with the caption, "Building our future, blocking out the noise. #family first." Privately, he dismissed the uproar as jealousy-fueled drama. "Babe, people are bored. They'll move on in 2 days," he said, sitting beside her in bed, scrolling through comments. "Sanaa is just a model. You know how campaigns work. Don't let gossip poison you." His tone was soft, soothing, calculated. Ariana nodded, her expression unreadable. She didn't argue. She didn't scream. But her mind was sharpening into something precise. While he tried to gaslight her into silence, she was preparing documents. She had already met with Faria twice that week. Every transaction, every social media post, every brand deal signed in Sanaa's name using funds from Denial's company was being catalogued. She had even hired a digital forensics expert to track flight logs and verify luxury purchases. To the world, she was still the quiet, loyal wife. But beneath the surface, she was building a legal arsenal. Her silence wasn't submission, it was strategy. Because while Denial was fighting for reputation, Ariana was preparing for justice. And when the time came, she wouldn't need to yell to be heard. She would simply speak the language of power he understood best: law, exposure, and consequences. The day Ariana filed for divorce, the press lost its mind. Her legal team delivered the papers with the precision of a military operation: quiet, fast, unshakable. The documents were airtight, every paragraph laced with undeniable evidence: asset concealment, emotional cruelty, breach of marital agreement, and misuse of marital funds for extramarital indulgences. Denial didn't find out through whispers or rumors. He found out through an official court notice hand-delivered to his penthouse, right before a scheduled press event at one of his new hotels. The timing was deliberate. Ariana wanted the world watching. The headlines exploded: pregnant billionaire wife sues tycoon husband for jet gifting infidelity, justice for Ariana, the court battle that could reshape divorce law, love, lies, and luxury, the rise and fall of the Shah marriage. News anchors speculated hourly. Social media turned Ariana into a quiet icon of revenge done right. Her calm composure in old photos now seemed less like passivity, more like the calm before a storm. Inside the courtroom, it was nothing short of warfare. Polished marble, clicking heels, cold air conditioning, and tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Ariana entered through a side door, dressed in an elegant, understated maternity suit. Her baby bump was visible, her face serene. Her eyes, though, were made of steel. She sat beside Faria, who stood like a lioness, armed with files and fire in her eyes. Across the aisle, Denial sat with a team of high-profile corporate lawyers dressed like funeral directors. His expression was unreadable, his hands clasped, but beneath the table, his leg bounced with nervous energy. He didn't expect this, not Ariana standing up, not like this. He had mistaken her silence for surrender. Now he realized, too late, that it had been preparation. Denial's lawyers went on the offensive. They painted Ariana as overwhelmed, emotionally unstable due to pregnancy, and influenced by hormonal mood swings. They argued that the gifts to Sanaa were business expenses, part of influencer marketing contracts. One lawyer even implied that Ariana's claims were driven by envy and postpartum paranoia. But Ariana didn't flinch. Then Faria stood, her voice calm but devastating. She presented printouts of text messages between Denial and Sanaa, each time-stamped, romantic, and unmistakably personal. She played audio recordings from the jet hangar, showing Denial gifting the aircraft with intimate affection. Flight logs cross-checked with Ariana's OB/GYN appointments revealed a haunting truth. Every time Ariana had gone in for an ultrasound alone, Denial had been flying off with his mistress. "Your Honor," Faria said, placing the final file on the table, "we have bank records showing shell company transactions made days before the jet purchase. We have recordings of the defendant assuring the mistress that she'll be taken care of, no matter what the wife thinks." These are not business decisions. These are betrayals, funded by marital assets. Ariana sat quietly as the judge flipped through the files. Her hands rested gently on her belly. Her silence was louder than any scream. Denial looked smaller with every passing moment. His team huddled, whispered, tried to find angles, but the case was crumbling. What he had once dismissed as a temper tantrum had evolved into a legal siege. And the woman leading it wasn't angry. She was focused. That made her all the more dangerous. As the courtroom emptied that day, a reporter asked Ariana how she felt facing her husband in court while pregnant. She smiled softly and said, "I'm not facing him. I'm protecting my child from him. There's a difference." And that line became the quote that trended for 3 days straight. Behind the calm exterior, behind the graceful nods and soft expressions, Ariana was making history. Her fight wasn't just for herself anymore. It was for every woman who had been told to stay silent, smile prettier, and endure. She had chosen the courtroom over the bedroom. And now, she was winning. The courtroom was unusually quiet as Ariana walked to the witness stand. Every step she took echoed off the marble walls, the weight of the moment clinging to her like a second skin. She wore a soft cream blouse and an emerald scarf draped over her shoulders, her 7-month belly prominent beneath the tailored fabric. But it wasn't her appearance that held the room still, it was her presence. She didn't waver. She didn't falter. As she took the oath and sat down, her eyes didn't move to denial. She looked straight ahead, calm and composed, like a woman who had already walked through fire and come out forged. Faria began the questioning gently, allowing Ariana to speak in her own words. Her voice was steady, clear. "I gave up my law career believing in a marriage built on trust. I never expected him to be perfect. I only ever asked him to be honest." Her fingers laced together in her lap. "What I got instead were lies, financial deceit, and abandonment at a time I needed him most." She spoke about the isolation, the countless nights she sat alone while he claimed to be traveling for work, only to find receipts for expensive gifts bought in Paris, Dubai, and Istanbul, none of which were ever given to her. She described how he made her feel demanding whenever she asked for time, how he minimized her instincts and labeled her concerns as overreactions. "When you're told you're crazy long enough, you start to believe it," she said softly. "Until one day, the truth breaks through so loudly you can't ignore it anymore." Then she turned to the financial betrayal. She laid out the records she'd compiled, transfers made to holding companies in Sanaa Iqbal's name, hotel campaigns that were actually romantic getaways disguised as business expenses, and the private jet gifted under the hotel group's name. "He didn't just lie to me," she said. "He used company money, money I helped him protect, to fund his affair, to reward her, while I stayed home, carrying our child." Gasps whispered through the courtroom. Denial shifted in his seat, jaw clenched. His lawyer rose, objected once, but the judge allowed Ariana to continue. Her words weren't vengeful. They were precise, measured, and that made them lethal. Then, Faria called her final witness, a name no one expected: Faraz Malik, Denial's longtime personal assistant. Faraz entered the courtroom nervously, adjusting his tie. He avoided Denial's glare as he took the stand. Under oath, his voice trembled but held. "Yes. I was instructed to process the purchase of the jet using hotel business funds. I flagged it as unusual, but Mr. Shah insisted. He said it was for VIP influencer marketing, but I saw the messages. I saw them flying together. It was personal." He handed over a printed email chain between Denial and the finance team, proof that the transaction had been disguised under false project coding. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing as he read. That moment changed everything. Ariana didn't smile. She didn't gloat. But she exhaled, for the first time in weeks. Not in victory, but in validation. She had spoken the truth. And now, finally, someone else had spoken it with her. The judge looked up from the documents, his gaze shifting toward Denial, less neutral, more skeptical now. The scales had begun to tip. Sana Iqbal took to Instagram Live days after Faraz's testimony shook the courtroom. Wearing no makeup and dressed in a neutral-toned hoodie, she spoke with practiced vulnerability, her voice cracking at all the right places. "I didn't know," she insisted to her hundreds of thousands of followers. "He told me they were separated. I didn't even know she was pregnant. I was lied to just like everyone else." The internet lit up instantly. Supporters flooded her comments, calling her a victim, a woman used and discarded. For a moment, it seemed the tide might turn. A few brands issued lukewarm statements saying they were monitoring the situation, but hadn't made any decisions. Influencer gossip channels split into camps, Team Ariana versus Team Sana. The narrative was hanging on a thread. Until Ariana posted a screenshot. No caption. No drama. Just cold, silent truth. A direct message exchange between Sana and a mutual friend, dated 6 months prior, showed Sana saying, "I'm not worried about the wife. She's pregnant, but he said she's boring now. I'm the one he's investing in." Another message followed, this time from Sana to Denial, asking, "Did she see the Paris photos? Don't let her ruin our plans." Within hours, the sympathy for Sana dried up like spilt champagne on a hangar floor. The hashtags flipped, #exposed, #not the victim, #jet mistress. One by one, brands pulled out of sponsorships. A luxury skincare label posted an apology for previous affiliations. Travel companies scrubbed her face from campaigns. Even fashion designers who once courted her clout now deleted her from their lookbooks. Her follower count dipped in real time, a digital unraveling. She reached out to Denial, texted, called, left voicemails pleading for him to defend her, to tell the truth, to fix this. But he never responded. In the courtroom, his team distanced themselves from the entire Sana scandal, claiming it was a personal mistake and irrelevant to the company's legal defense. Privately, he shut down her credit cards. The jet was grounded under investigation. The apartment he leased in her name? Evicted. By the week's end, Sana was no longer the woman who posed in sky lounges and designer heels. She was a headline nobody wanted to touch, a liability in luxury's eyes. Once, she had flown high, wrapped in illusion and wealth. But now, she stood grounded, exposed, and utterly alone. The courtroom was filled with hushed anticipation as the judge returned from chambers. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but journalists sat rigidly in the gallery, pens poised, ready to capture history. Ariana sat tall, her hands folded gently over her belly, eyes fixed ahead. Faria sat beside her, her expression calm but alert. Across the aisle, Denial adjusted his cufflinks, the only sign of his anxiety visible through the forced stillness of his posture. When the judge began to speak, the room felt frozen in time. After reviewing all submitted evidence, including financial documentation, testimony under oath, and personal correspondence, this court finds in favor of the petitioner, Mrs. Ariana Shah. The words rang through the chamber like a bell. Ariana didn't move. Not at first. It took her a moment to absorb it. The months of silence, the nights of doubt, the pain, the weight of betrayal, all of it had led to this single moment. Vindication. The judge continued, detailing the ruling with firm finality. Ariana would receive full legal custody of the unborn child, a significant financial settlement calculated from marital and business assets, and ownership of 3 of Denial's secondary properties, including the penthouse. Most notably, the court had frozen and reassigned certain investment shares to prevent asset hiding. She wouldn't just walk away with what she deserved, she would walk away protected. But what mattered most to Ariana wasn't the property, the money, or the business titles. It was the part the judge said next. This ruling is not only about wealth, it is about responsibility. No individual, no matter how powerful, is above the ethical obligations of marriage, parenthood, and partnership. The law exists to shield the vulnerable from being silenced or manipulated. Today, it has done just that. Denial remained motionless, his face unreadable as murmurs spread among spectators. But it didn't stop there. Within an hour of the verdict, Regulatory bodies announced pending investigations into Denial's misuse of corporate funds. Board members from his hotel group released statements promising transparency and distancing themselves from his actions. His empire, once sparkling and untouchable, was now riddled with cracks. Ariana rose from her seat slowly, her strength radiating not in volume, but in dignity. She had won, yes, but more than that, she had reclaimed her life. She stepped out of the courtroom not as the wife of a tycoon, but as a woman who had chosen truth and earned her freedom. The early morning light spilled through the hospital window, casting a soft golden hue across Ariana's room. She lay propped up against pillows, her hair gently falling over her shoulder, her face still pale from labor but glowing with something deeper than radiance, peace. In her arms, wrapped in a soft ivory blanket embroidered with tiny doves, lay her daughter. "Zoya," Ariana whispered, her lips brushing the baby's forehead. "It means alive and brave." Zoya's tiny hand curled instinctively around Ariana's finger, the grip impossibly strong for something so small. Ariana felt her eyes fill with quiet tears, not of pain or sadness, but of wonder. She had made it. Through betrayal, heartbreak, and public scrutiny, she had crossed the fire and emerged with new life in her arms and a new sense of self in her chest. Faria was the first to arrive, holding flowers and a pink onesie printed with "Future Lawyer." She laughed, cried, and held Zoya like she was her own niece. "She's already stronger than both of us combined," Faria joked. In the weeks that followed, Ariana did not retreat from the world. She didn't disappear into silence or privacy. Instead, she worked, quietly, purposefully. While feeding Zoya in the early hours of the morning, she drafted business plans. While rocking her to sleep, she answered emails. With help from Faria and a small circle of trusted allies, Ariana launched Zoya Legal Foundation, a consultancy dedicated to providing legal counsel to women trapped in emotionally or financially abusive marriages. The mission was simple but revolutionary: help women recognize red flags, understand their rights, and walk away with their dignity intact. Within 3 months, the foundation had handled 6 major cases and was already expanding nationwide. Her inbox overflowed with messages, not just from clients, but from strangers who'd watched her journey unfold online and found courage in her example. And then came the day of the Women's Empowerment Conference. Ariana stood backstage, baby Zoya nestled in her arms in a soft wrap, blinking sleepily under the gentle lights. A presenter called her name, and the crowd erupted into applause even before she stepped into view. She took the stage slowly, her heels clicking against the polished wood, a mic clipped to her collar. She looked out at the hundreds of faces, some familiar, many strangers, but all watching her with a sense of hope. "I never thought I'd be here," she began, her voice firm, unwavering. "Not like this. Not as a lawyer. Not as a mother. Not as someone who turned pain into purpose." She paused, placing a gentle hand over Zoya's back. "When the man I loved betrayed me, I was told to keep quiet. To stay graceful. To endure. For the sake of family, for the child I carried. But I chose something else. I chose to speak. To fight. To protect not just myself, but every woman who thought silence was her only weapon." The room was so still you could hear breath catch. She stepped forward, voice rising ever so slightly. "He gave her a jet," she said, her eyes hard and calm. "But I held the law. And I flew higher." The crowd stood instantly. Applause thundered through the auditorium, a sea of clapping hands and tearful eyes. Women hugged, others wiped tears, and some just stood in awe. Ariana smiled, full, proud, unbreakable. In that moment, she wasn't the betrayed wife, or the media headline, or the courtroom survivor. She was Ariana Malik, the woman who walked through fire with a baby in her arms and a legacy in her name. Freeze frame: Ariana holding Zoya, smiling into the spotlight, alive, brave, and absolutely unstoppable.